Welcome. I'm your host, Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership, but most importantly, about leaders. So, we always talk about leaders, but what if I tell you that a leader is also a follower? And this is something we have discussed today with the guest for this 12th episode, Matthew Gould. Matthew is a coach like me. He's a leadership coach actually like me, and he's been a coach for a long time, more than 20 years now. He's also a negotiator and an expert in mediation. Before that, he has worked in sales. So he has a great experience with leadership and with leaders, having to talk to them for work on a daily basis. And one of the things actually we talk a lot, is not just how a leader is also a follower, and the meaning, of course, of in a context actually, of course, of teamwork, but also how a leader sometimes feels lonely, being lonely at the top. And actually, Matthew and we exchanged kind of different views, not completely different, but surely there were some points and perspective that were not the same, given also a different experience, different stories. Nonetheless, it was so nice to hear what he had to say about this important topic. And as you will hear, Matthew is a very inspired person and caring person. He, especially at the end of the conversation, refers a lot of leadership, has a kind of a mission for people to any level. Doesn't matter if you are the CEO of a big company or just the leader of yourself. The mission that he advocates for is to try to leave this place better than we found it. And when I talk about this place, I mean this planet. So I would say that Matthew is an inspiring person, an inspiring human being, and you will surely appreciate his wise words, his openness, his being authentic in front of this microphone in this small context of the podcast. So before I leave you to Matthew, I would like to remind you that you can follow me on social networks such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course TikTok. But also, for more information about leadership coaching, you can go to masteryourseat.co. So with no further ado, I'll leave the stage to Matthew Gould. Welcome Matthew Gould. Welcome to our podcast, and I'm very happy you're here with us.
Thanks for having me, Stefano. It's great to have a conversation about leadership and relationships and everything we're going to cover today.
Right. And I know, Matt, that you have a great story and you also have a long experience in leadership. You are a fellow coach like myself. So it's going to be kind of interesting exchange of ideas. Actually, I'm going to ask questions mostly. So, but I'm very glad and I'm looking forward to hear what you have to say about leadership.
Yeah, thank you. We all have diverse journeys, and look forward to sharing the ups and downs and the sideways of leadership. And I have to say, Stefano, I'm extremely jealous of your accent.
My Italian accent?
You have such a great voice. So this will be a lot of fun listening to you ask questions.
Okay. I'll try to make myself understandable despite my accent. Okay, so talking about journey, as I said, you have a long experience in leadership. And what is your understanding of leadership? What is your definition of leadership?
Yeah, great question. Historically, I would have defined leadership. So my background is I've been in sales for a long time, and I've worked in different companies. And I'd say ever since I was a kid, not knowingly, I was involved in leadership. In that, to me, a definition of leadership is being in relationship with other people as you pursue a goal, or you pursue a mission, or you pursue a purpose. And what I find interesting with your question is often we define leadership without the situation.
Right.
And because the situation can often dictate what it means to be a leader. And instead of doing it the other way around, here's what a great leader is, now go and apply it to the situation. I think we've possibly flipped it, and should consider what's the situation first, and then we can determine what a great leader is.
Okay, that's an interesting. You wanna let me linger a little bit here, because now I'm very curious about how you would adapt leadership to the situation. If there is anything you want, any anecdote that you want to tell us. I'm sorry.
Yeah, an anecdote. Yeah, there's many stories, Stefano. In working in the corporate world, there was a movement from sort of authoritarian leadership. You have some experience in the military, and
just a little. 30 years, yes.
30 years, and there's value in authoritarian leadership in a crisis. There's value in rank and file. The certain situations require us to know who's leading, what's the direction, and to not question orders in certain situations. And then back at the mess hall or back at head office, when we're not in a crisis, we may not need to use rank and file. We may not need to have authoritarian ways when we're just deciding what's for lunch and who should get the lunch. So I think in a business world, sometimes we're there to serve. Sometimes we're there to be servant leaders. How do we strengthen our team? How do we give them the tools and the resources to reach our goals? And at other times, we need to tell people what to do. It's not about serving them. It's about directing them and instructing them. And the situation will dictate that.
I wish that what you're saying was always true. As you say, coming from the military, where the authoritarian leadership is normally applied, and it doesn't matter sometimes if you are in a crisis or in a dangerous situation or a more peaceful office doing your paperwork, you still have a lot of people applying the same scheme. It doesn't matter where they are. And as you say, it doesn't always go well. So basically what you're saying is that a leader should adapt to the situation, right? So you need to find your style, change your style depending on the moment you are, the urgency or the crisis or whatever the emergency, or not. Actually, you are more relaxed. What else could influence a leadership style? What other elements you think might influence the way a leader behave and act as a leader?
Yeah, I think as you were speaking, I want to make sure we don't mislead listeners in that the situation is needed to then determine how, let's say you and I are on the same team,
right,
and there is a situation that appears, let's say the economy changes, we're now behind on our sales target. We now need to change the way we're going about our business, possibly. And I'd say the other two key elements of leading is what's our purpose or our mission. That's super important.
Right.
What are the coordinates we're trying to reach? Like what are the metrics or coordinates we're trying to get to? And then how do we behave as a team? What are our core values? So when the situation or the environment or the customer or our competitor changes, one of the things we should look at is what's our purpose, what's our mission, how did we say we would behave and make decisions, which would be our core values,
Right.
integrate those together as we navigate the situation. So it's leadership, I have found, it's about that true north. It's about what's our mission, what's our purpose. Now let's integrate the obstacles that have come in our way and together communicate and navigate through the obstacles towards our goals.
And you mentioned the True North is also the title of a beautiful book about leadership by Bill George. I don't know if you have read it, but I would really recommend to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Is very well written, very clear, very well structured, and give an idea, actually a quite good idea on what leadership is and what is needed to be a leader. And I really like the True North that you use, and also the word navigate, because it makes me feel more in the Navy again.
Well, it gives us, sorry to interrupt, it gives us the ability to navigate. Means we have to think. So leadership is about thinking. Leadership too, Stefano, is following. So I believe if you and I don't know why ship comes up in terms of navigating, but whatever we're in, if we're in a vehicle, if we're in a company, if we're walking down the street, if we're marching towards a goal together, and we're moving in the same direction, navigating is what we do. Should we turn left? Should we turn right? Should we increase our prices? Should we lower our expenses? Should we add a team member? Should we reduce our payroll? Like, we are always navigating and making decisions. And if you're the head of the team and I'm a follower on the team, how I show up in situations, how I communicate with you, I can then possibly become the leader in the moment, and you, as the, call it, the head of the team, will follow me and my perspective because I'm the closest to the customer. So I believe that, and great high performing teams, everyone on the team is a leader, and we each play a role to contribute towards reaching our set of goals and objectives together.
And that's very beautiful what we just said, because of course these allow everyone in the team also to feel part of the group, to really have this kind of sense of ownership, right? And there is also sharing of the vision, as you mentioned earlier, sharing of the mission. And when I mean sharing, it means really making the mission your own mission, not just the team mission, right? And then you feel it like your own. But you work with leaders, as I do. What is that you tell them that they should do, or what do you suggest? I mean, you're a coach, so you don't tell them.
Yeah.
But still, what do you think is what is that they should do? Let's put it this way: what is it they should do to create this environment where people is a leader and a follower at the same time? And there's a beautiful, by the way, is a really beautiful definition.
Yeah, there is no cookie cutter, as you know, and we're both coaches. There is no cookie cutter should. Here's what you should do. I love your word, Stefano, to create an environment. So what I would, when I get to come along beside teams and leaders and followers, once again, they're all part of a team. So I see everyone that I get to interact with as a leader, in part because leaders influence situations. They influence other people. They're trying to put the flag onto a certain territory, right? So leaders influence, they make change, they create change. So one thing I encourage leaders and teams to do is to think about what they're creating. Like, think about it. And you said earlier, ownership, this idea of ownership and being responsible for the mission or the goals or the purpose or the values. Yes, if we all understand that we're responsible for creating something together, it causes you to think. So I ask teams and encourage teams to get into discussion is let's create an environment. So what are we creating? What are we responsible for? And you've heard the word we. What are we responsible for? Leadership is a team sport.
I totally agree with you, especially on the we part. And I think that the best teams is when really everyone in the team, doesn't matter your role, they do think as a team. And whenever they talk about successes or failure or whatever, it's not just I or him or her, it's we, it's us,
Yeah.
it's all together. We fail, we succeed. We are creating, something, and it's this we that really give the sense. It's a shift. I mean, it's a big shift because normally people join the team with I'm coming, my experience is me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you are a team member, and that's the new you is a whole team. I love that. However, there is a moment in which it doesn't matter how strong the team is. I think there is, and I want you to, of course, just push it back if you think it's wrong. But there is a moment in which leaders feel lonely, right? And that's my experience. I'm putting my experience, and especially when you have to take decisions, because you can have the best team in the world and you have the most blended people around you, the best stuff supporting you, but at the end of the day, responsibility of decisions falls upon the leader, and that's when the leader has to decide. And my experience is that sometimes, especially when you have to take some tough decision, you might feel lonely. I don't know if you have ever talked about this with your clients, but can you tell us, how a leader can feel less lonely, if there is anything that you have studied or suggested or dealt with?
Yeah. The idea of being alone is to me, and from experience with working with people who say, oh, it's lonely at the top. First of all, leadership in 2023 isn't necessarily about being at the top.
Right.
That infers a top-down hierarchy. We've built organizational charts that are circular, so we each play a role around the circle, and what's at the center of the company is the mission, the purpose, the values, and the goals. And if you take away leadership for a second, I can be lonely if I don't interact with other human beings. And so there's this perception, there's possibly an older perception that says, because I have the most responsibility in the team, I can't share how I really feel. I can't share some elements of the decision I need to make, and it falls on me. And Stefano, I would argue I would say that
we can argue, don't worry.
Yeah, that's an older paradigm. And if we're a team of two, like husband, wife, or podcast host and podcast guest, we're a team of two,
right,
and we need to make a decision. I don't know where loneliness falls in. And unless I choose to not share with anyone. And the whole industry of executive coaching often is, oh, I can't talk to my team. Once again, old paradigm. So I'm gonna work with an executive coach where I can share my vulnerabilities, I can share my truth, I can share my concern. That's a good use of trying not to be lonely. And so is being vulnerable. And the word vulnerability to some can be weakness. I'm not sure how it translates in Italian. And to me, vulnerability is just speaking the truth. I'm not sure the best decision to make, and here's the decision we're making based on the data that we've been provided. And because leadership is a journey, Stefano, a wrong decision can be addressed. Like, we never finish this journey of leadership. We never arrive. It's a constant pursuit of our purpose, our mission, our values, and our goals. It's continuous. And so, yeah, I think being lonely at the top, there's a couple of paradigms that are old there. Number one, the leaders at the top. And number two, it's lonely. That's up to us to break down and to do it together. Let's do this mission together. What do you think of that perspective?
No, it's a great perspective, and I agree with you. But not all organizations allow the leader. No, I'm not saying to be vulnerable. I agree. I absolutely agree on the necessity actually to be authentic and show up the person you are as you are.
Yeah.
You don't need to put a mask. You're not infallible. You are a human being. You succeed and you fail. You're smart, but you don't know everything, right?
Right.
And you're not always the smartest in the room, right? And so there are a few things. But yeah, there are some structures. I'm not talking just the military, but any organization, I guess, any company. You have one person on the top, and a bunch of people helping this person. It can be the leader of a team, or it can be the CEO, or it can be, doesn't matter the rank or the level. What I feel there is still a sense of loneliness is really the moment you have to say yes or no to something. It's like, oh, we need to lay down, for example, some people is, you have the stuff and you work with the stuff, and they come up with ideas, suggestion, and other things that you evaluate with them. And even if you agree with them, the responsibility is still on you. It's still you, Matt, that you will take the decision. And if it's a good decision, good, the team has worked well. It's a bad decision, the team has not performed perfectly, but you have the responsibility of it. I think this is very military-like, and it's because we always say responsibility cannot be delegated. You can share the task, whatever, everything, but the responsibility is on the leader. And that's why I was referring to this loneliness. It's not just the loneliness at the top. I think it's more like a moment. It can be a minute, it can be a second, it can be an hour, a day, a week, doesn't matter. But it's something that you have to process to make, especially a tough decision.
Well, yes, and if you believe that everything rests on your shoulders, I would argue it doesn't. Once again, there's the word argue. I don't know why I keep saying that.
No. But actually, I do agree with you.
It rests on the team. It rests on the entire team. And yes, if by position, by responsibility, the arrows will be pointed at me if it's a bad decision. That's part of the responsibility of leading. And the team, if the team knows I'm about to execute a bad decision and they don't say something, then that is a reflection of my leadership. I have not set up an environment that says we need to reach this milestone and the health and wellness of our team is equally important. They're both tied for number one. So if we have to deliver metrics for our shareholders, we also have to take care of our team, and the team needs to take care of themselves in order to reach those metrics for the shareholders. If I'm about to make a decision that is going to sacrifice our results and sacrifice our people, both tied for number one, hopefully someone says something. So if it's purely let's drive results at the cost of our people, that's just an old, call it, that's not really a leadership decision. That's a financial decision. We need to take mental health and mental wellness into concern. physical health and wellness. There's so many variables around people we need to consider, as well as results and the scores and the points and what we're trying to deliver out there. So nowadays, leadership, I would say, Stefano, there's four parties we need to consider when we're leaders, whether we're at the top, in the middle, at the bottom, however you draw your organizational charts. There's you, the leader. There's me, the teammate. There's us, the whole team. And the fourth entity is others. So you, me, us, others. And when we make decisions in alignment with what's best for me, what's best for you, what's best for us, and what's best for others, I don't know how that's lonely. I don't understand that concept of it's lonely.
I see that. I see that. I'm not. I don't want to push it back. Actually,
Please
I like
do.
this. No,
Please
no,
do. Because that is part of leadership too, Stefano. Is the push and the pull, and I don't agree. Good. What
No,
don't you
it's and of course we're coming from different paths. That's the beauty of it, and that's why I really enjoy those kind of conversations. And I guess my military background leads me to knowing what is this loneliness of the leaders, and it's not just me, the team as a whole, and the others can be stakeholders, can be the crew, can be anyone, or the whole Navy if you want. It's still that there is a specific moment in which people look at you. It's like, okay, the team is like, okay, boss, we suggest you to go right. There are risks, there are benefits, we don't know. We go left, there are more risks and less benefits. So we think we should go right.
Yeah.
Where do you want to steer the ship to?
Yeah.
And that's where, you gotta have a great team. They know what they're doing, but still, are you gonna go right? Or are you gonna go left? Yeah. This is the beauty of it. This is the beauty of leading. If you are there in that moment, it's because someone has believed in you. It's not only that they have believed in you, they have trained you to be there, right? Yeah. They trust you.
Yeah. So that's such a good example. And if the whole team is saying go right, and with your intel, your experience, your history, you believe we should turn left, and the whole team is saying turn right, and you actually know that turning left is the right way to go, you can say, hey, everybody, here is why we're going to turn left. In fact, we need to turn right now. There's certain things that you can't see, so we are going to turn left. And because it's 2023 and no path is identical to the historical path that was taken, I am willing as a leader to turn right if my decision, if our decision, if my experience no longer serves the crew, the mission, our core values, and what we're trying to achieve. So we can get in trouble as leaders if we say, look, the way we've done it before is we're turning left. So just turn left. Well, people won't execute that order very well if they don't understand why, or if the leader doesn't say, look, the moment we get into some trouble, if I've made a bad decision based on history, I'm willing to veer the ship off course again. So I think it's what's coming up for me as we're talking here is leadership is a series of conversations. It's a series of adjustments. We never have all the information. What happened in the past won't necessarily work in the future. And we need to be willing to adjust and communicate really effectively as we move.
And communication is so important. the last episode, actually, I was interviewing another fellow coach, and she's an expert in communication. So really went in depth in what is communication and the communication styles, and that was beautiful. So I recommend to listen to whoever is listening to this episode as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now let's say that the team and the leader and everyone has decided to steer on the wrong side, and you hit a rock. Never a pleasant situation. And I'm talking about failures, of course.
Yeah, failures. Yeah.
Right. Failures, and we know that failure is an option, despite the Apollo mission. Failure, it is an option. So, what do you think a leader and a team should do to deal with failures in a constructive way?
So that's a great question. There's 3 time zones to consider as a leader, as a team: the past, the present, and the future. If a decision was made, and using your analogy, we hit a rock, we missed our sales target, something happened that we decided to go that way, or we invested in a technology and let's say it didn't work. As a leader, once again, everyone on the team is a leader. How do we look at the failure? First of all, where do we place it? Is it in the past? Is it in the present? And is it in the future? If something's happened and we can determine that it's a failure, it sits in the past. If we may, not that there's a mistake on a podcast. If we made a mistake on the podcast, do we blame you or do we blame me? Blame doesn't solve anything.
Oh, don't tell me. Yeah.
So failure sits in the past. Now, how to address it? Let's understand it. What happened? Let's learn from the failure, pull the pieces together, and make an adjustment. Now, we make an adjustment now to influence success in the future. So what I found in working with teams when they're frustrated about a failure, that energy is misplaced. The energy can be spent on quick acceptance that there's been failure because it's in the past. We can't change the past. All of our energy can be placed into the present. What can we learn from our decisions, and how do we not make those same decisions that ended in failure in the future? So there's this radical acceptance of the score is the score. We created this score. If we're losing, we only up until now. We're losing up till now. So rather than say, oh my gosh, we're losing, well, we already knew that. We can all see the score. We can all see the results. We can all see the metrics. We know where we're at. Let's get present with what's causing the failure, including even who's causing the failure. It's okay. Like, where are we making decisions that are ending in failure? Okay. What do we need to stop doing that's caused it? What should we start to do that's new that will make the adjustment? And by the way, there's some things we're doing well. Let's continue those things. So long-winded answer of, if the failures happen, it's happened. It's in the past. Get really present with what adjustments do we need to make? What do we need to learn from the mistake? And together make those adjustments and influence the future.
Let me begin saying that once again, I do agree with you, especially on the blame game. That is, I think, is a lot of waste of energy and time and motivation.
And trust is broken. Trust is broken.
Right, trust is broken. So let's hypothesize that I'm one of your clients, and actually I tell you, hey Matt, you know what the problem is? If there is a failure, I want to understand whose fault it is, because this person might be fired or change position, change rank, or anything else, or actually this person might have some training, dedicated training, so they don't fail anymore.
Yeah.
So I really want to find who's responsible for that.
Yeah.
What would you tell to this person?
Pardon me?
What would you tell to this person?
First thing I would say is don't exclude yourself from the fault.
Oh, I love this.
Because you not put that person in charge, but you shared the responsibility of where you were trying to go as a company, where you're trying to go as a team. So you were responsible ultimately, Stefano, for having that person on your team. So the first person to take a look at is yourself and say, where did I not arm that person with the right training? Where did I possibly give them too much responsibility, and I made a bad decision in giving that person the responsibility. The second thing is when you find fault, let's say I made the mistake and you're trying to find out, Matt, what you made the mistake. The energy and focus should not be on, and I don't like the word should, so I apologize for saying that. If you place the fault on me, 9 times out of 10, I already know it was me. So it's the energy, and if you come and attack me, you're creating yet another problem. Not only do we have the original fault that's still not being dealt with, now you're going to need to spend time, money, and resources, Stefano, repairing our relationship.
Absolutely.
So it's an energy thing. If you come to me and say, Matt, look, let's understand what happened. This was in your unit. This was in your department. This is under your responsibility. By the way, it's our responsibility. So under our responsibility, mine included, Stefano's included, let's look at where the fault happened. What happened? And I say, you know what, Stefano? I dropped the ball. I never responded to the customer, or I didn't double check my work before I applied to the RFP, or whatever the mistake I made. And you say, okay, do you understand the mistake you made? And I say, yes. And you say, okay, good. So good. What do you need from me to not make that mistake again? What do you need from you? Like what policies and procedures, Matt, can you put into place so you don't repeat the same mistake in the future? And then as a team, what can we do to ensure this doesn't happen again? So yes, people fail or processes fail. Let's find out if it was a process failure, a process failure. And if it was a person failure, let's talk about that, understand it, and make the appropriate adjustments together. And look, some people will fail over and over and over again. And we'll support them 2, 3, maybe 4 times. And at some point in time, they might just not be a fit. And that's okay. And they can go and work on another team in another company, and hopefully it's a fit.
Let me really stress a little bit of what you just said, especially the part where someone comes out and say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And you can do this when you feel absolutely safe. And
Yeah.
creating psychological safety in a team is a tough job. It is a tough job. I mean, you need to build trust, as we mentioned already. You need to build openness and everyone showing up in an authentic way. It takes a lot. It takes courage. What do you think?
Well, psychological safety, if let's say we're a team of 7, every person on the team possibly has a different definition of psychological safety based on all of their backgrounds and upbringings and previous experience in companies and teams and leaders. What is psychologically safe to you is possibly different than the person beside you. which is, so as a, let's say you support a team of 7, there's 7 versions of what psychological safety means. And
Absolutely,
what
but
safe,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think it would be the same for any word you want to put in into it. Even trust. If you ask
Yes,
7 people, what's your definition of trust? They will come out
yes,
with something different, like leadership.
yes,
I've been asking a lot of people what leadership is, and no 2 people has given the same answer. And it's
right.
similar, not the same.
Yeah. And look, you're a coach, I'm a coach. I spend a lot of time in the leadership. I'm just a student of this. I love being on your podcast because you're introducing in your questions different thoughts and patterns around, or ideas around, what does it mean to lead? And so to the question of psychological safety, for your listeners, leading is hard. Leadership is hard. Living in 2023, the dynamics are always changing. When COVID hit, there was an expression, we live in unprecedented times. We're always in unprecedented times.
Right. Yeah, I was saying the same.
It's
Thank you for
never
saying.
been May 12th. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. It's never been May 12th, 2023 at 6:40 in the morning.
Right.
You and I.
Actually, thank you for waking up so early for this
Oh, you're
interview.
welcome. Thanks for having me. And so we're always in unprecedented times. So yes, leading is hard. Psychological safety is it. Let's talk about it, because if you're not safe with me, Stefano, you're actually not able to give me feedback, speak your truth. And so if I have the final decision making responsibility, I'm possibly going to make bad decisions because you don't feel psychologically safe to give me feedback that the decision I make is the wrong one. Well, boy, oh boy, or man, oh man, or girl, oh girl, that's our shared responsibility. So being a leader in 2023 requires awareness of our influence as leaders, and psychological safety is just one element, and it's an important element, because if we don't tend to it, we might get bad information. We might go back into your point about being lonely. We might feel really lonely because no one's interacting with us. Well, that's on us as leaders, not on our team. That's on us. Why aren't people speaking back and pushing back on things I'm saying? That should be a question we're asking ourselves. We should invite challenge to
Yeah.
make good decisions.
Well, do you think being a leader in 2023 is more difficult compared to leaders 30, 40 years ago?
I'm not sure. If there was a leader from 30 years ago and a leader now, we should ask that. We could ask them, right?
Yeah.
I think I was a leader of a team. I'm 52, so when I was 22.
Are you young?
I would say it's just different. Leading now is different than it was before. With social media, everyone's a broadcaster. Everyone has a news channel. There's a lot of information, and there's a lot of opinions that are thrown around with just surface level. I agree. I disagree. You can't do this. You should do this. And in this environment, we're missing the context. We're missing the depth. We're missing the whole story. And so, is it harder? I don't know if it's harder. We need to take the elements that are around us in 2023 and have discernment of what we integrate into our leadership and our mission, and what we ignore and don't take into account. So yeah, with the media channels and social media being in one example, we just have to be discerning of what's really important here and what isn't.
I understand what you're saying. The only doubt that I have when you say earlier, that we should ask someone that was a leader 40 years ago and is still a leader now, is what would be important to find out if this person has changed after leadership, because probably he or she was a leader 10 years ago successfully. So some people think that since they have achieved success, they don't need to change.
Yeah.
And we know that because we've been actually fighting this idea, this concept in this conversation. It's a journey, and you are never at the destination. Every destination is just like a temporary destination. Is a logistics stop, so you can understand what's your next destination and move on and evolve.
Something just triggered it. If we could go back in time, which we can't, and this is why leading is a series of conversations, I would answer your question differently right now, like 2 minutes later. Is it easier or harder to lead now? I would say certain things are easier now, and certain things are harder now. And the consistency is leading, regardless of your position in a company, it requires responsibility and work. If we go back 30 years ago, parts of leading 30 years ago were easier than today. Parts were harder than today. And there was still the responsibility to work and make decisions.
What makes it harder now? What was the aspect of leadership that is harder now, and what makes it harder?
Possibly, well, this could be both a plus and a minus. So access to information, it might be harder now to make decisions because we have access to an abundance of information.
Yeah, you got plenty, right?
Yeah, that could also make it easier now because we have an abundance of information.
And let me stop you. It makes it easier if you have in place a system to filter the information you don't need. Otherwise, it's easy. I understand what you're saying. It's easy to get lost in this ocean of data you will receive daily, every second.
Yeah. So I think
podcast.
we could probably bring up any element about the different metrics of leading and what's required and the different skill sets, and we could possibly tilt the scales to say more information makes it harder to lead in 2023. We could also have a rich conversation that more information makes it easier to lead in 2023. So I think once again, what's the mission? What's the purpose of the company? What is the team striving towards? And maybe even just the comparison of 30 years ago today, maybe that's a bit irrelevant. And what we should really focus on is how are we striving? How are we doing? What adjustments do we need to make? And that's really, really important for us to focus on that versus comparing ourselves to 30 years ago. Because so much was different 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah, it was.
And we can learn from it.
Yeah, of course, we can learn from anything, but the core of leadership, I would say, that has not changed. And going back to how you define leadership earlier, a relationship where you have the leader that is also a follower.
Yes.
I don't think this has changed since forever, probably. And of course, this might be interpreted in a different way. It depends where you are. It depends your culture or the place where your story, your experiences. But still, leadership in the essence is really this relationship you build with others, and this hasn't changed, I would say.
Well, we're going to run out of time on what you just brought up because others. I'll tell you why. Because others. This is a philosophical answer. Others will include. I don't like the word, and I'll use it. The enemy. So. I think in 2023, a great leader is interested in advancing humanity, not being divisive and saying my team, my cause against the enemy or against another human being. So there's historical leaders who have been really effective at movements and caused a lot of death and a lot of pain for other human beings. I think in 2023, with all the information we have and learning from history, how do we together as the human race thrive on planet Earth? That's the type of leader that I hope is coming up. That's the type of leader I hope is listening to this podcast, where it's like, hey, what's in it for all of us, not some of us?
I like it. I know, and then this goes back to actually the other two things you said when you define the leadership. There is the mission, of course. It's so important, because if your mission is to dominate the world, well, you might be a great relationship, but still, I don't think someone can call you a good leader, a benevolent leader, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And even that, I mean, the world, let's dominate the world. Let's live and contribute to the world. like let's, even dominating the world, I think we've been dominating the world, and it's been harmful. Whether it's the environment, whether it's resources, like I think the world is, we're on, that's our home turf. Planet Earth is our home turf, and we're ripping up our own turf. So how do we, and this, once again, this could be a totally separate podcast. And I think historically leading has been about claiming territory. How about the territory is the planet? And how do we together negotiate and navigate and thrive as a team? Humanity being the team, planet Earth being our home field advantage. Now, how do we lead through all that?
I wish it was easy talking about this on the podcast, but of course
Leading's hard.
We have to deal with humans. They have ambitions, they have biases and differences and other things. And at the end of the day, we struggle sometimes even too much.
Well, we're the human too, right? So possibly as we look to wrap up, to the podcast listener, you're human too. So we have to deal with humans, that in a way that's over there, those humans. Well, we're humans too. So I think there needs to be some grace and some compassion for the human condition and our emotions and all of the health and the unhealth. And leading is hard. We need to integrate a lot of things to advance and move forward. So yeah, it's hard. And the first person to lead, let's consider a couple more points here. The first person to lead as a leader is yourself. We often look at the team. The first person to lead is yourself. How do you look at situations? How can you change your perspective? How can you navigate your own emotions and your own triggers and your own ego and your own insecurity? When I'm asked to work with teams, it's, can you come and help my team? Well, are you part of the team? If so, let's look at how you're leading yourself.
And this go back to the concept that is very dear to me of personal leadership, that you cannot be a good leader if you are not capable of leading yourself first. And going back to what you said earlier, before I ask you the final question, there is my mantra, what I consider my mantra. There is a quote from Baden-Powell, who was the founder of the Boy Scout movement. He was a British Army general with an interesting background in intelligence, actually. But there is a funny book about it. But by the way, what he said is, try and leave this world a better place than you found it.
Yeah.
And that's something that is so simple and yet so inspiring and beautiful in the essence of it, right? Okay, Matt. Thank you for this
Love that.
conversation. And well, as always, let me ask you, what is the suggestion you will give to someone that comes to you and asks you, "Hey, Matt, I want to be a great leader, a good leader. What should I do?" What would you tell to this person?
I like the quote you just gave, and I would say try to leave the world a better place than you found it. Well, really, I like the simplicity of that, and it's true. The other thing I would say is ask yourself before you make a decision, any decision, starting with the decisions you make for yourself and how you think, how you behave, and how you act, is this going to help or is this going to hurt? Like, will this help humanity? Will this help us? Will this help our purpose? Will this be in alignment with our values? Will this help planet Earth and our home turf? Or will it hurt planet Earth and each other? Will it help or will it hurt? And if we can just make that binary decision, oh, it will help, I would encourage you to proceed. And if it's going to hurt others and the earth and ultimately you, I would ask you to pause and see if there's another decision you can make.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for these inspiring words and also this great conversation. I really appreciated your experience and your view on leadership, on the loneliness of leadership, and I really like also what you say about being a leader and being a follower at the same time, and then that's a view of leadership that changes a lot. So thank you very much for having me with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you. And if you think it's not you, if a leader thinks it's lonely, rather than blame the conditions, take responsibility to reach out and make connections with people, and you'll find it's not lonely.